think the next big shift will be...
How do you measure brand awareness at the BBC?
Is that a kind of big thing as well, sort of trying to get corporate invested in things like TikTok and YouTube? Is that part of what you're doing as well?
If the BBC didn't exist and it was created next week, for example, would the marketing plan, what you have at this moment in time, differ to what this new BBC would look like?
I think actually it's a really good question. I think we'd probably...
Cool. Welcome back to Digital Cheesecake. I need to remember to say hit follow every time.
Hit follow,
Yes,
and
hit follow.
sign up to our emails.
We've got a very exciting guest today. I think I reached out to you on LinkedIn because I was like, I want to find some amazing backgrounds, and you've got a really cool background, Charl. Tell me a bit more. I think you've done like Absolut Vodka, CMO. Now you're at BBC, which is epic. So tell me, how did you go all the way there?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation.
No problem.
Always appreciate an earnest and authentic reach out, and great to be with you guys.
Yes.
So I'm actually an engineer originally,
yeah.
which is kind of, I guess, a bit peculiar for the world that we're in of marketing. But it's interesting how these worlds collide eventually, with data being sort of at the forefront of marketing today. I mean, I'm a South African, Lebanese South African, grew up in a small town, and when you're the child of immigrants, typically you become doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
True. No pressure. No pressure.
So when I announced that I was going to study mechanical engineering, my great uncle literally said, "But you can become doctor and you want to become mechanic?" Anyway, sort of fast forward a couple of years, South Africa was opening up after apartheid. So lots of companies were coming into the country, and Procter & Gamble was one of them. Wow. And they were looking for young graduates, and I managed to get into the organization. Started out as an engineer on a production line. And then one of the senior guys in the organization, the plant manager, actually said to me, "Look, I want you to become a business leader. I think you've got potential. I'd like you to go in that direction." I said, "But I'm an engineer." Like, well, and it was probably the sort of best steer. And I got some experience in distribution and on the sales side of things. And I saw my marketing colleagues having these launch events. And I thought, wow, that looks like fun.
That looks fun. Everyone wants to marketing like that. Yeah.
And then the consultancies all arrived in South Africa, sort of late 90s. And one of them was Bain & Company. And they said they got hold of me because they were looking at all the blue chips. And they got hold of me and said, "Do you want to be a consultant?" I said, "Sure, but what is a consultant?"
Yeah, that's cool.
I had no idea. My dad had just passed away, unfortunately, so we were under real financial pressure as a family. And Bain sort of doubled my salary, which wasn't much, by the way, but they doubled it. And I said, "I'm coming."
Where do I sign?
Where do I sign? And then they said, "Look, do you want to go to London?" I said, "For sure." And so I arrived in 2000 in London during the dot-com boom.
Whoa.
And it was just incredible. Like, it was my working MBA in a way. Learned all about finance, about turnarounds, about private equity.
Cool.
And then .com was the thing. So I actually managed to get myself onto quite a few of those projects. It was, the time when a 26-year-old was kind of valuing organizations, which is the reason why there was a .com bust, by the way, in 2000, while the bubble burst, because people like me were kind of sucking our thumbs and
figuring it out.
And then Bain sort of wanted me to go back to South Africa onto a big banking project, and they went bust actually in South Africa. So there was they're back again and they're doing well, but South African breweries at the time was looking for a sort of someone with a strategic background to come and be an assistant to the chairperson. I think they call it chief of staff today. And it just seemed like a really great place to go because I'd heard so many good things about the organization. It was a HR focused place. It was all about leadership development, and what a journey that was. 11 years of just growth. I have to say, probably one of the best experiences I've had from a leadership growth perspective. And it was there that one of the senior marketing people, Jeff White, from Scotland originally, said to me, what are you doing on that side of the fence? You need to come across into marketing. And that sort of started my journey.
Did it take a lot of convincing? Or you were like, let's do these parties?
I'd been looking at that side of the fence for a long time.
Okay, cool.
And from strategy into marketing, it's quite
it's
just the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Did you have to do any courses, or did you just learn on the job? And
a lot on the job.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I was fortunate. They did send me on some exec programs to places like Harvard and Northwestern University. And I was really great. I mean, honestly.
Did you like Boston? Was it good?
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, that's cool.
I was recently married to Dominique, my wife, who came along with me on that particular trip. So,
That's
so it
cool.
was, it was one of those experiences that you kind of go down and you think, I wouldn't mind going back
You
there.
see the Patriots, the Celtics.
Yeah,
It's so good.
we did. We went to go watch some baseball at
Yeah.
it was Fenway Park, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Boston Red Sox. Yeah. Nice.
So
Red
cool.
Sox, yeah, exactly. And then, so, really great career at breweries, which culminated with my sort of last role there was general manager of a brand called Carling Black Label, which you probably know.
Yeah.
And it was then that Pernod Ricard, which is a
Yeah.
big French spirits company, they were looking to enter into Africa more deliberately.
Okay.
And I got a phone call and a conversation. Originally, the phone call was, let's have a meeting to see how we can collaborate.
It's always
Yeah,
interesting
that's
like those
right,
ones,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, and then I walked into, it was a hotel lobby in Johannesburg. And there were two people waiting in suits. And I thought, okay, this is more
They're gonna
than
take me.
This is a bit more.
This is not,
take me
this
away.
is not Instagram collaboration.
And Connor McQuaid is now the CEO for their North American operation. Connor said to me, look, I know you're really happy where you are, but come and join me and put your thumbprint on something. We're going to create something from scratch. And that was a really appealing,
That's cool.
it was a really appealing kind of offer. So we moved to, and then of course moving to Cape Town was another part of the
Yeah.
appeal. And so my wife and I, and at that stage, our eldest Jordan was born already. So the three of us moved down to Cape Town. Luke was born there, built a team. We sort of won awards, came to Cannes.
Cool.
It was really exciting. And it was through the work we'd done on Absolut into Africa,
Yep.
through something called One Source. So One Source Vodka from Sweden,
Okay.
One Source of All Humanity in Africa. We did a
Like it.
collaboration
Like
with,
it.
with,
That's
You're doing collaborations back then, and now they're so big. You're
yeah,
starting
yeah,
them.
yeah. Well,
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually in the history of Absolut from 1970s and 1980s already.
Yeah, okay.
The first collaboration was with Andy Warhol, who was a
okay.
pop artist at the time.
Yeah.
So the brands like Absolut really are kind of at the
Yeah,
vanguard
true.
of popular culture. And it was through that work that I was noticed by the CEO for Absolut out of Sweden, Anna Malmacher. And we were at an industry event, and I was actually at the tequila stand. And she came and tapped me on the shoulder, and I sort of stood to attention when I saw her, because it was around midnight.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she said to me, how would you feel about coming to Sweden to bring the magic of Africa to the world?
Oh, wow.
And I
What
just
a
said, yeah.
Why not?
Not very eloquently. But and I remember phoning Dominique and saying to her, it was like 1 a.m. in South Africa, I was like, do you want to move to Scandinavia? And by that stage, Luke was born, our second. And she said, yeah, let's do it. And so,
Oh, that's
I give her a lot of credit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
She's just
She's up
really
for it.
she's up for it.
Yeah.
And so the four of us then moved to Stockholm in 2019. And that was 5.5 years of just incredible growth, leading a marketing team across the globe for Absolut Vodka. And it was there that I developed a great collaboration with a sort of creative genius, Tad. He was ex-Nike, and he and his wife had moved to Sweden, yeah.
Love that name.
And we launched something called Born to Mix,
Yeah.
which is kind of our now the global tagline. The group had asked for the Just Do It for Absolut, so I think we've
Cool.
given them.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we've given them the Born to Mix.
Yeah.
And it
Cool.
was during that time that Anna, who had brought me across to Sweden, had been at an event in London, and they were asking her for somebody that she thought would be a good fit for the BBC. And she gave my name, they contacted me, we had a long conversation on the phone over months, I have to say.
Months.
Yeah.
Months. In
That
fact,
makes
in fact, it took about a year and a half before the...
That's a long process.
It is a long process. I think
Why was it so long?
Keris Bright, who's my boss,
Yeah.
and the Director General, Tim Davey, had been talking about the need for a Chief Brand Officer.
Nice.
Okay.
So it's a new position.
New
within the
position.
BBC.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And they were
Gosh.
exploring whether it was, something that the market, there was appetite for it in the
Yeah, yeah.
market, and the conversation started. And Tim actually, in one of the conversations along the way, said to me, do you really want to be remembered for another flavor of vodka? Or do you want to come and help us defend democracy and freedom of speech?
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, what a question.
I do
Way.
again, where do I start?
Yeah, we're outside. And,
Yeah.
and Dominique and I are both Anglophiles. We love all things about London and the UK.
Yeah.
So it was just this really nice opportunity to move to a city that we love, and she had lived here previously as well.
Okay.
And by that stage, Ella had been born in Stockholm, so our little daughter.
Oh,
So now it was 5 of us moving to the UK, and that was, I started the job in March last year, but we moved in July last
Yep.
year. So
Okay.
It's not a year
Oh,
yet
wow.
in the UK. Yeah,
So you're pretty fresh here.
pretty fresh.
How you
off the
finding
boat,
it?
Off the boat.
Yeah.
you know?
Off the boat. I don't know if we're allowed to say. I got in trouble for saying that last time off the boat. I think.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't
Australians just say
remember.
so many inappropriate
Nah,
things.
Yeah,
So we have to
they
be.
really do. Actually,
We really
Yeah, they
We're always like thinking.
But you know what? I can say that because we South Africans are known for it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I know we're not good together. It's not
No,
good.
no.
Yeah, so how are you finding it as well? Like the being there for the year and in
So look,
London.
being at the BBC is incredible. It's been kind of like mind blown in
Yeah.
a way. It's incredibly progressive. Interestingly, people don't realize this is an incredibly progressive organisation that a lot of brands talk about having purpose at their core.
Yeah.
The BBC is designed with purpose.
Yeah.
You know, Lord Reith in the 1920s, more than 100 years ago, was talking about making the world a better place.
Yeah.
This was post World War One.
Yeah.
So you've got that in the very fibre of the organisation. So it's a real treat to be there, and working with such incredibly creative people. I mean, the challenge comes because it's very complex. There's loads of brands, so
It's a big organisation.
it's a big organisation. So intellectually, it's really exciting because you can apply some of that FMCG marketing experience
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
try and bring some structure to it. But the people are great. The environment's really interesting, and I think it's also an interesting time to be there with the media category being so disrupted with
Yeah.
platforms.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's a really interesting time.
What's
And
it
then,
like competing against the likes of like X, YouTube?
It's
Yeah.
like any brand has to know what the unique selling point
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
What their distinctiveness is, and really the BBC's distinctiveness lies in its public service values. So in a world that's increasingly polarized and
Yeah.
increasingly directed by algorithms to little
Yes,
bubbles,
yeah.
Yeah.
that public service value in media becomes more important, I believe. So
Agreed.
I think what the competition does is it just brings in stark focus the job to be done and the jeopardy around that job to be done. This is not
Yeah.
just a brand that needs to win because it's a commercial success for shareholders. This is a brand that needs to succeed and be sustained because it's providing a service and it's has a purpose not only for the UK but actually globally.
Yeah.
So there's a real sense of jeopardy. There's a real sense of mission.
It's a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's retaining its Britishness
Yeah.
whilst being a global brand,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do you think about that when you're doing all marketing campaigns and working with your team?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because we've defined 3 roles. I mean, when I say defined, they've always been there.
Yeah.
But you try and put them in words to make it simple. I always say marketing is about
Simplify.
Take the
Yeah.
complex, make it simple. Take the simple, make it exciting. That's our
Cool.
job, right?
I love that.
Nice.
But that
Yeah.
was taught to me by one of my mentors.
That's great. I'm going to take
Ali.
that
So
from
let me give Alistair Hewitt.
you. We love name
credits.
dropping.
Big
It's
up,
fine.
Yeah, because that's the big thing that we were talking about. Because obviously, well, I suppose being British, BBC,
Yeah.
it's 100 plus years old, very British heritage brand. So, is that kind of a bit of your mission to keep it relevant? Is that something that you're sort of focusing on, or how
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've actually introduced recently the idea of brand power into the
Okay.
BBC. So it's a new concept at the BBC. It's not a new concept.
Yeah.
And the brand power is built on 3 pillars: salience, which I think it's important for every brand; relevance, which you've just touched
Yeah.
on; and distinctiveness. So relevance is really high on the priority list,
Okay.
and relevance with the next generation
Yeah.
audience as well. So there's confidence in the content that we have. There's confidence in the mission. There's acknowledgement that the market is fragmented, that people are in their bubbles. So it's about reaching out. It's about ensuring that relevance is not only in the product, which is the content and what we produce,
Yeah.
but is in the perception, and
Yeah.
that the audiences that we're reaching out to, we're reaching them in the right places. We're finding them through social media, on the platforms that exist. So yes, relevance is really, really high, both in terms of the business itself, but also in terms of the platforms that we use and that we create.
Is that a kind of big thing as well, sort of trying to get corporate kind of invested in things like TikTok and YouTube? Is that part of what you're doing as well?
It's part of what we're doing, but
Yeah.
I have to say it's not a door that's closed. It's an
Okay.
open door. The thing that I've been really impressed by, and I was warned about, so when I was coming to the BBC, people warned me, said, "Oh, it's very British, it's
Yeah.
very old school." It's actually the other. I've been surprised positively.
Okay. That's good.
It's very open-minded. At least this current the current people in the
Yeah.
organisation, very
Yeah.
open-minded, very willing to listen to what the opportunities are. I think anybody in a business that's around shaping culture.
Yeah.
So the BBC does shape culture. Has to be very attuned to what the audience is thinking, where the audience is at, and I found an organisation that's quite willing and open.
Okay.
You know,
So they're open to exploring those things
absolutely.
rather than it's going to be a
The
struggle.
challenge is we're publicly funded. So finding the resources to go after those opportunities.
Is it different resources to alcohol, like lower budgets, or is it similar budgets? Would you
It's
say?
I would
Sorry
He's
about
not going
those.
to give you the budget, Jack.
No, just like in a roundabout way. Is it
No,
different?
but I think
or?
it's a very. Look, I think this is about a conversation about marketing and some of the challenges.
Yeah.
And kind of what we do. It is a challenge because public funding means that you're under a lot of scrutiny. So you need to be
True.
sure.
That's what you think straight away about public funding, scrutiny, and
Scru- But the thing is, if you like any good business person, if you can show the case for why this is going to help sustain that public service and why it will sustain relevance for audiences, which is ultimately what we need to do, then there's an openness to shifting resources.
Yep.
It's unlike the commercial world, like if you have a bumper year, you have extra resources that you can plow into a new area. With public funding, it's pretty consistent because it's driven through the license fee. And we're not sort of getting a bonus or an extra sale. It's more about how you utilize the resources more effectively.
But that makes you better, surely, or makes a marketeer better because you have to be resourceful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we say that. It makes you more. You have to be quite articulate in why this is going to be a better investment than something else.
Yep.
So communicate really good to those above.
And actually think. One of the things that's actually quite what I'm enjoying at the moment is that the BBC is really trying to think more as an enterprise, like more across the business. So when you're thinking as an enterprise, you're thinking, well, should that investment be in the user experience on the platform? Should it be in the way we reach out to younger audiences? Should it be in the content itself? And that's the arbitration that you make. And the thing about brand marketing and strategy and kind of those worlds colliding is that if you start thinking about your organization and your business as a portfolio of brands, then you're able.
TV, radio, online.
Well, it goes beyond that actually. So those are definitely channels and platforms.
Yeah.
But the brands could be something like Top Gear, which is a brand that's nascent. It could be a current brand like Strictly Come Dancing.
Gosh, there'd be a lot then.
Do you know what I mean? There could be a channel like Radio 1.
It's complex, isn't it?
It is complex, and there could be the performance, the talents who are that name that's actually
the brand themselves.
So could be a genre. It could be it could be documentaries from the BBC. It could be BBC News. So these are all
it's just so
brands
much.
that are swirling around. So there is complexity, but I mean that's the fun part, finding that simplicity.
How do you measure brand awareness at the BBC? I love this.
Brand awareness. No, that's salient.
As chief brand officer, you got to tell me.
So salience is really what we're measuring.
Okay.
Are you aware of the brand? Have you heard of it?
Yes.
And are you considering using the brand? That's the important one.
Okay.
Are you open to using it?
Yep.
So there's the master brand BBC, but then you've got all of these sub brands, and that's where it becomes interesting. Because most people have heard about the BBC in the UK.
Yeah.
But are they willing to pay for it? Are they happy to pay the license fee for all that the BBC offers?
I'm on the edge.
Yeah.
You're nearly there to convince me.
Honestly, you're not only contributing to your own happiness, but you're contributing to the future.
Okay, I'm in. All right. Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
But how do you do it? I mean, they're moving to TikTok now. I've seen that the BBC is like quite a bit on TikTok as well. How do you, again, it's kind of tying into your question. It's a premium brand, but then you're on TikTok and the content is very different to the feed that you see, which might be the news articles, to the content that you've got to churn out on TikTok.
Yeah. So we pride ourselves, the BBC prides itself on premium quality content that's been curated. And it offers you a journey to go for discovery. It's not just the stuff that you want to see. We'll kind of throw some things in there that you might not even been aware of, and it might pique your interest to go and explore. And that's the whole point, is kind of, true liberties when you know your point of view, but also the other person's point of view.
Yeah.
Then you can make up your own mind. And so here's a view, that this is a personal view, which is audiences, consumers will always find the thing that's most relevant to them. Once upon a time,
Yeah.
it was radio. We were a radio broadcaster, out of home. Then it was TV, and TV was the big thing.
Yeah.
And you had a
Yeah.
department focused on TV. Then it was digital, and it was all about digital and websites, and now it's social media channels, and then the next thing
You're
is
right.
TikTok, and then
Yeah.
Keep us on our toes.
and then we thought that the metaverse was going to be it, and it wasn't.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But the
that's
point
so true.
is that's going to change constantly.
It's going to change again.
But the principle of providing premium quality content that can open your mind, that gives you three things, that gives you the truth, at least the best attempt at the truth, which is multiple perspectives, shares homegrown stories, really the stories of the UK, but the stories of people, the places, and brings people together in an increasingly divided world. If you can bring that to bear in all of those platforms in a way that's relevant to that platform, to that audience, then you're winning. Now, it always sounds a lot easier than it is, right?
Sounds lovely.
No, particularly in a
You were
resource...
simplifying really well.
Yeah. But in a resource-constrained world, you can't do everything to sort of the 100%. So they have to be quite pragmatic. Like, where's the...
It's moving the dial on different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting because I used that metaphor with my team once. It's a
Yeah.
bit like a graphic equalizer.
But I
Yeah.
think like that.
You know?
When
Yeah.
you're doing tasks
Yeah.
or having numerous tasks, I'm thinking about moving the dial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I like
business,
that.
by the way.
Yeah.
I think that's not just the BBC, that's business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so often when we're caught up in the craft of a particular thing, and people get really caught up, like let's say it's TikTok and that particular video, that's good. You need people with the craft and the discipline to kind of deliver in that space. But then you need to take a step back and go, okay, 60% is good enough.
Yes.
You know?
Agreed.
We can't be 100%
You
everywhere.
can't be 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
So
true.
how have you, I mean, it sounds like a lovely career journey. I'm like, what are some key challenges that you might have had, even just building your career?
Yeah.
Even going from alcohol to media.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, look, I think the key challenge is self-confidence, actually. I mean, I say this quite openly and vulnerably. I'm a small town boy. I said it to you earlier on. I'm like, my dad was a farmer. I'm a Lebanese immigrant's family as well. Sometimes I'm sitting here having this conversation. I'm like, I don't deserve to be here.
Oh,
Like, who the hell am I to be talking about any of this? And I've had some amazing mentors along the way and just go, look, the thing about the world and the way the world is shaped, it's by everybody. Like, you've got a point of view, speak up, don't be afraid to come and sit at the table.
Yeah.
And, that would be my advice to anybody entering the journey is like, don't be afraid to speak up at the table. But the opposite side of that, because we do have a generation who's quite willing to speak up, the
Yeah.
opposite side of that is also be very willing to listen.
So true.
And listen, my late father used to say, you steal with your ears. and I do a very bad impression of his accent. Because he was actually pretty articulate.
Yeah.
But he always said, steal with your ears, steal with your eyes, learn from the people that are around you. Learn from surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. So the challenge is learn as much as you can and believe in yourself. But I accept that there's going to be moments where you're just low, like
Yeah.
particularly moving countries, and I see the impact on my kids, my eldest in
true.
particular.
Yeah.
I have real moments of doubt, like,
Yeah, that
did
would
I
be
do the
tough.
right thing?
Yeah.
This was pretty selfish. I really wanted to work for the BBC.
Yeah.
He's having to make new friends. He's the one struggling
It's
at school.
tough, yeah.
That's the stuff.
Would you change anything though?
For
That's got a
Deep
regret.
questions.
yeah, but
No, because a
No,
lot
just
of
in
marketeers
general,
won't travel to a different country
Yeah.
or even a different part of the UK to further their career.
Yeah.
So what you've done is very brave.
It is, yeah.
And you are thinking about your family at the end of the day to make sure that they're having a better life. And
Yeah.
It's interesting, particularly at the time in Sweden where we were very much the sort of foreign family, and it's made us all grow significantly. And the truth is about growth is it's very painful.
So true.
yeah,
Like
but that's why you become better though.
I
Exactly.
genuinely believe
Yeah.
that. I used to ask my dad, I mention him a lot because he had such a profound impact on me. But, he was 21 when he left Lebanon. He didn't have an education.
yeah.
He didn't have money. He didn't have WhatsApp.
So that's where you get it from, the
He didn't
bravery.
have- but he didn't have
Yeah.
WhatsApp. He didn't have a phone. He didn't
I
have
know,
email.
amazing.
Just cracked on and gone with
He
it.
cracked
Yeah.
on, lost his mom during that time, got the telegram or the message 6 weeks after she'd passed.
Oh my God.
Couldn't go back.
And I said to him, I often asked him, like, how did you do it? Like, he said, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think, for many of us, that's the case, particularly if you've grown up in a sort of a developing market. If you want an opportunity, you've got to go and embrace it. And complacency is actually something to watch out for. Comfort is actually something to watch out for. And I think we're facing a period of time now where we're all feeling a bit uncomfortable economically, politically.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
I think there's going to be a lot of growth that comes out of it, but like hold your breath and get through
It's
it.
a good point.
you know.
Yeah. I think at the moment, I mean, you're probably finding that. How do they even maintain that confidence at the BBC? Because there probably is, you know?
Jeopardy, absolutely.
Yeah.
Confidence is an interesting thing because it's less about confidence, more about belief. I think there's real belief that this is the right thing that we're doing. There's real belief, and there's lots of distractions. There's some people that have been a bit naughty. There's some things that have,
There's always someone who's
That's always-
really
Are those people that have been there for quite
Is
a
it
long
you?
time? Though?
or that have been there sort of years ago, and now
Yeah.
the stories have come out.
Yeah.
But what it forces, and rightly so, with good leadership, transparency. We talk about it openly. There's a culture project underway that's actually being announced on Monday
Oh,
of
wow,
how we
okay.
get past all of that. And there's always going to be a moment where an organization, a person, has to kind of confront its past and then move to the future.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's great.
a case of like confidence is, I've seen too many people who pretend to be confident, but they're just bullies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you looked across the Atlantic right now, and there's a lot of that going on. It's about real belief. It's about being true to the mission, I would say,
Yeah.
because then you have a North Star and you have something to move towards. And it could be successful. It might not be, but at least you're heading in the right direction.
It sounds like every move you're getting growth. So in the last year, where would you say the major growth has been in your marketing skill set? Would you say?
No, I would just say managing complexity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is definitely the thing I've had to sort of get my head around. And also, it's a new category for me. It's a new industry. Learning about like what is the product? What are we actually selling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is premium quality, curated content that has positive impact on the world. I mean, would be the way I'm sort of formulating it in my own mind. I would say managing complexity, being in a new category, learning the rules of a new culture.
Yeah.
What about your team as well? Is that been a big thing to kind of get them on board, or have they, been like super welcoming? And
I've been very, very lucky. I have to say,
Okay.
I've been very, very lucky with my direct team. They've been incredibly welcoming
Nice.
and very willing to get on board. I think the challenge for them sometimes has been that I'm thinking about stuff and I need to communicate it better.
yeah,
So it's kind of like
that's
trying to get
a
the
lot of
stuff on,
people,
trying to get the
Yeah.
stuff onto paper and be sure that there's clarity with a larger organization.
Yes.
And I find I'm better talking than I am with writing. So I've had to
Yeah.
come to terms with that.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get more sort of personal chats with the broader team
Okay, nice.
and just talk them through kind of the thinking and kind of where we need to go and what
Yeah.
we want to do. And that's helping. But the
Okay.
team's been incredibly welcoming, and I have to say they're all, very good professionals.
Yeah.
Know what they're doing. It's my role is actually just to bring them together so that there's more of a collective effort that's more centered around, a singular purpose. I
So
think
like
that's been-
everyone's on the mission and they all feel
there's
that
a
as
true
well.
north, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So if the BBC, I've got a question. So if the
love- he
if the
loves
BBC
Yeah.
if the BBC didn't exist, for example, and it was created next week, for example, would the marketing plan, what you have at this moment in time, differ to what this new BBC would look like, or would it be?
I think actually it's a really good question. I think we'd probably be doing some of the things we've got planned in the next 6 months to 12
Yeah.
months. We might have done them 18 months ago.
Got you.
So it's more a case of, because what you have is when you have legacy, you
Yeah.
need to kind of feed the machine
Yeah.
Yeah.
while orientating towards the future. I think what not having baggage allows you to do is orientate towards the future
Be more streamlined. Yeah.
and quicker. I think that's all. I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of what you get, isn't it?
Yeah.
In corporates as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
You kind of you have to bring what you have and what's existing
the
along with
journey.
you on the journey. Yeah.
I like that.
And how big's the team at the moment? Is it?
I mean, it depends on how you cut it, but direct about 250.
It's a large
In
team.
marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good
massive.
size though for the
But that
BBC.
includes our internal agency, our internal
Yeah.
media team.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it is. I mean, there's a big creative team that we have in house. I mean, brilliant at their job as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what is the future for next year, the next 12 months, would you say? What plans
I would
have you
say
got?
the probably the big. So we've landed this idea of brand power.
Yeah.
But it's really helpful to have a common language and a common measure for an organization.
Yeah.
Because then people speak the same. They know what you're aiming at. I think the next big shift will be looking at a portfolio map and actually using that for some of our arbitration decisions. Coming back to
Yeah.
resources, having a view of the portfolio, and that's what we're working on at the moment. So that's the big shift. Then I would say we're heading towards charter and, driving advocacy for the BBC. Your point, like I'm on the fence. I think if you don't know what the BBC stands for, if you don't really, like particularly older generations understand it, but if you're younger and you've got Netflix and Spotify, like why the BBC? But then when you sort of get to know what's under the hood, and the fact that when you put on the radio, you're actually consuming the BBC. If you put on Radio 1, it's BBC.
Yeah, we go straight to Radio 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of people don't even realizing that they're in that world.
I think, that's the key thing.
Yeah.
I still think there's an education piece for the new gens that are like coming in.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a new gen. I wish I could be. But I'm like on the fence because it really helped me during COVID times in terms of like where I could have a view, because I think there was quite a lot of different views. But for Australians, it's either the ABC, and that's... But it's also...
And the BBC and the ABC have a great relationship on Bluey. I mean, what a great thing to come out of that.
Bluey's great.
I mean, that's
Bluey is,
God,
from my hometown in Brisbane. It's
incredible.
amazing.
It's actually Australian.
It's so amazing. I mean, that is really cool.
Really nice
we love
collab.
that collab.
Yeah.
But I think like the education piece will be interesting for the BBC.
But a lot of kids at school, for instance, are using the BBC's resources through Bite Size.
Oh, cool.
So we help, help kids with their learning. We have sort of news roundup that kind of goes to schools as well. introduces younger ages to the news cycle. My 10-year-old comes home and he's always very excited to tell me that he watched the BBC today.
I bet.
But it is, I think certainly when you start putting your own young ones in front of a screen, knowing that someone's behind that, curating the content so that it's
you can see the process
to the benefit of that generation. And with no disrespect to platforms, the challenge with a lot of platforms is that there isn't curation. It's just kind of an open space, and you're not quite sure what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of public debate about that at the moment, which is very healthy.
There's so many questions I want to ask you, but I'm like, should we be wrapping up?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you want to say as a final piece?
No, I encourage what you're doing and encourage people that when they're on their journey, particularly in marketing, is to recognize that the consumer, that the audience that they're dealing with are human beings.
Yeah.
They've got needs, they've got aspirations, and part of our job is to bring a positive influence on society, no matter what you're selling.
Yeah.
And so just be mindful of that when you're creating,
because
we're creating culture. We're creating a future.
And I think it's hard with what's happening. And actually, maybe that's the last quick question is, there's everyone the speed of lightning. Everyone is trying to do things at the speed of lightning. Are you finding that at least, obviously AI, we don't love always talking about it because it's sometimes like, oh, not again.
Yeah.
But do you find that is, like you've been there probably since that year of like everyone shifting their work habits. Have you been able to see that? And are people, you're trying to slow them down or...
I think that's a really, really good question. That's your final one. So, but I'll pause because that's the point. I do think that when we're running, and we all are, and there's so much, and there's there's so much information. I think that taking a deep breath and pausing as an individual, but also as a team, and reflecting on kind of, are we heading in the right direction?
Correct.
So what's our true north? And are we doing too much? Are we doing too little? Are we overwhelming the people that we're meant to be serving, our audience, our consumer? And just being mindful, I think, is really, really...
I think so.
It's in that sort of mental health space of being mindful, not only about ourselves as individuals, but ourselves as a team, and then also on the society that we're having an impact on.
Yeah, I think it's a breath of fresh air you coming on and talking about it, because a lot of our guests will either be like, this,
Go.
but you kind of just broke it down from focusing on the brand power piece.
Yeah.
You've been able to bring it back to what the key objectives are really.
The truth is that particularly in the Anglo world, so if you've grown up in the UK, South Africa, Australia, the US, English as a language sort of speeds up as people try to show that they're smart and know what they're doing.
So true.
And it's interesting because having grown up with immigrant family who are super smart, like they were some of the smartest people I know, just slowing down your speech can really help. And just actually slowing down the meeting can really help. And allow people to really get to the nub of it. Like you might be saying a lot, but what are you actually saying? Is
You're
the question?
So right.
Is the question we should be asking ourselves? Like, what are you actually saying?
Especially in marketing.
Yeah.
I'm the worst at it.
I'm just thinking. I think when I spoke with you, it was a 20-minute call, as quick as possible. You were like, let's just talk to each other. I was like, Okay. Haven't done that in a while.
But it goes back to things being really uncomfortable at the moment as well. And I think people do want that North Star. So almost
Yeah.
the BBC, that's an opening almost to be relevant as well, because people need that sort of structure, I think, more than ever.
Yeah, and just, I mean, an invitation, particularly on the BBC, we've opened up an audience participation piece. We've actually reached out to everybody in the UK. We're asking people in Britain to have their opinion on what the future of the BBC should be.
Okay.
You know, something like 20 million emails have gone out.
Oh, wow.
So if anyone's actually received the email, or check out the website, we'd love to hear
Cool, I will.
what the future of the BBC should be
Okay, I like that.
for
I
the
love that.
for the future of
Yeah.
of this audience, for the people of this great nation. So
I want to,
I like
I'm
that.
into
Love
that.
it, yeah.
Yeah, I
Keep
like
Charles
that.
in the business. Literally. Okay, cool. Well, it was great having you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's all.
Great. Well done.
Thank you.